The Galactic Capital had always been a place of noise, movement, and fear. It was the center of the empire, a city of towering spires, endless markets, and guarded walls that reached the clouds. Ships from 1,000 worlds came and went each day, bowing before the power of the empire. Every race knew the rules: respect the emperor, obey the soldiers, and never bring trouble to the heart of the galaxy. Those who forgot were erased in an instant. But on this day, something different happened. Something no one expected. The sky above the capital split with light as ships entered the atmosphere. At first, the people thought it was another imperial fleet returning from Conquest. That was common. The empire always had wars somewhere, always had victories to parade. But then the banners became clear and the crowd froze. These were not imperial ships. These were human ships, the citizens whispered in panic. Humanity was not supposed to come here. They were the strange species from the edge of the stars. The ones who did not bow. The ones who had resisted every attempt to be broken. The Empire had prepared fleets and armies to crush them if they ever dared to step this close to the throne world. And now here they were. The first human ship landed in the great spaceport, its engines glowing softly before fading into silence. Then another ship landed. And another. Soon the horizon was lined with them, black and silver, heavy and purposeful. The Empire's soldiers rushed into position, their armor shining, weapons ready. Civilians ran into the shadows of the towers, holding their children close, waiting for the attack. Everyone expected fire. Everyone expected war. But it did not come. The humans emerged from their ships slowly in perfect lines. They wore no banners, carried no flags. They held no weapons in their hands. Their armor was simple, dark and unmarked, as if they wanted no symbol to tell the galaxy who they were. They did not shout. They did not chant. They simply walked. Step by step, they crossed the shining floors of the port and moved toward the wide gates that led into the city. The Imperial soldiers tightened their grip on their rifles. Any moment now, they thought. Any moment the humans would reveal their trick, their true purpose. Perhaps they had hidden weapons, or perhaps they would attack with strange technology. The air was tense, the soldiers' fingers hovering over the triggers. A single spark could ignite a massacre, but the spark never came. The humans did not break formation. They did not raise their voices. They walked forward as if nothing around them mattered. The city, the soldiers, even the giant cannons hidden in the towers above. Their silence was heavier than the footsteps of their boots. From the highest balcony of the palace, the emperor watched. His golden armor caught the red light of the rising sun, and his eyes narrowed. He had prepared for this day. He had filled the skies with fleets and the streets with soldiers. He had expected screams, panic, fire, and blood, but instead he was given silence. A silence that stretched across the capital like an invisible force. The people noticed it too. The usual noise of the city, the market calls, the hum of machines, the chatter of millions, slowly faded. All eyes turned to the humans. Their calm presence pressed on every mind. It was not the silence of fear. It was something else, something stronger. A child in the crowd whispered to her mother, "Why are they not afraid?" The mother had no answer. The silence grew louder as the humans passed through the gates and entered the main boulevard. The great avenue that led to the emperor's palace was now their path. Statues of past rulers lined the way, each carved to show power and glory. But none of the humans looked at them. They kept walking, steady, unshaken. The generals of the empire shifted nervously. Some demanded action. "Strike them now!" one shouted, his voice trembling. "They are too bold. Show them fear." But another general shook his head. "Wait, look at them. Do you not see it? They are not here for war. They are here for something else." The emperor remained silent, his sharp eyes locked on the humans. He could see what the generals could not. There was no hesitation in their march, no arrogance, no weakness. They were not seeking to provoke. They were not begging for peace. They were simply there, as if it were the most natural thing in the world for humans to walk into the heart of the galaxy. The empire had ruled for centuries through fear, but fear seemed powerless against this. Panic was supposed to break the weak. War was supposed to crush the strong. But silence was a weapon no one in the empire understood, and already it was cutting deep. One by one, citizens emerged from hiding, unable to look away. They did not cheer, did not shout. They only watched. Even the smallest of them could sense it. The humans were different, and so the humans kept walking. Toward the palace. Toward the emperor. Toward the very heart of the empire itself, they did not stop. They did not falter. They did not speak. The silent arrival had begun. The humans kept walking through the capital, their boots striking the shining stone of the great boulevard. The silence they carried spread wider with every step. The citizens of the empire, who had once shouted and cheered at parades of victorious soldiers, now stood frozen along the edges of the street. Their voices were locked in their throats. Even the merchants closed their stalls. Even the machines seemed quieter. The generals of the empire were restless. In the command halls hidden behind the palace walls, they argued in low, harsh tones. Maps glowed in the air, showing the humans' slow advance. Thousands of soldiers waited in alleys, on rooftops, inside armored carriers. Cannons were aimed at the boulevard, locked on the human formation. Every trap was ready. With one signal, the sky itself could rain fire. Yet no order came. The emperor's advisors begged him. "They mean to humiliate us," one said. "They are testing our strength," said another. "If we do not act now, we will lose the respect of the galaxy," warned a third. But the emperor raised his hand and silenced them. His gaze remained fixed on the humans, small black figures against the golden towers. He had seen many enemies before, and he had crushed them all. But never had he seen an enemy like this, one that carried no weapons, no fear, and yet forced even his generals to tremble. The soldiers themselves felt it most. They lined the streets, armor gleaming, rifles charged and humming. Their orders were clear. If the emperor gave the signal, they would fire without hesitation. But their hearts betrayed them. The closer the humans came, the heavier their weapons felt. One soldier whispered, "Why do they not stop? Why do they not speak?" Another answered, "Perhaps they do not need to." Fear moved through the ranks faster than any command. The humans had not lifted a hand, yet the soldiers already felt as if they were losing. The silence of the humans was no accident. Every step, every look, every breath was calculated. They walked not as conquerors, not as victims, but as equals. In the empire, no one had ever dared to act equal. Every species had bent the knee. Every race had cried out in terror when faced with the emperor's throne. But these humans were different. They did not bow. They did not cry, they simply walked. Whispers spread through the crowd of citizens. Some whispered that the humans carried hidden weapons so powerful that even silence was dangerous. Others believed they were messengers from the stars, beyond the reach of the emperor's rule. And still others, bolder than the rest, whispered that the humans were not here to start a war but to end one. The people's eyes began to change. At first they were wide with fear, then they narrowed with curiosity, and finally they softened with something dangerous: hope. The empire ruled by crushing hope. It was the most forbidden thing in the galaxy, and yet here it was, flickering to life again in the hearts of millions. Inside the palace, the emperor leaned forward on his golden throne. He had felt fear before, though he would never admit it. But this was not fear of weapons or armies. This was fear of losing control, fear of losing the silence. He realized, with cold anger, that the humans had turned silence into a weapon sharper than any blade, heavier than any cannon. One of his generals slammed a fist on the table. "Give the order. Let us end this now." The emperor did not answer. His eyes studied the formation of humans below, marching closer to his palace gates. Their silence was calm, but inside it carried weight. It told him something he did not want to believe. It told him that they were not afraid of him. That thought spread like fire. Across the capital, the people sensed it. Across the command halls, the soldiers felt it. Across the galaxy itself, in hidden corners where oppressed races listened to secret broadcasts, the story was already forming. The humans had walked into the heart of the empire and showed no fear. The empire had armies, fleets, and weapons. But the humans had something greater. They had silence. The silence did not weaken as they neared the palace. It grew heavier, like a storm pressing on the air before the thunder. The soldiers guarding the gates shifted uneasily. Their fingers hovered on triggers, but their eyes betrayed them. They looked at the humans, and for the first time in their lives they wondered if they were on the wrong side. The emperor rose from his throne. His cloak flowed behind him as he stepped forward. He wanted to see the humans with his own eyes, not through screens. He wanted to feel that silence for himself. His guards moved to follow, but he waved them back. "Let them come," he said softly. His voice, usually sharp and powerful, now felt small in the vast chamber, and so the humans kept walking. The Empire watched. The galaxy listened. The silence spread deeper, wrapping around every soul. The fear no longer belonged to the people. It no longer belonged to the soldiers. The fear now belonged to the Empire itself. The humans had not yet spoken a single word, yet the entire Galactic Capital trembled. Their silence was heavier than thunder, and the Empire's heart struggled to beat beneath it. The streets were full of whispers now. Citizens who once shouted praises to the Emperor now spoke in hushed tones, careful not to be heard. They whispered about the humans. Maybe they are not here to fight. Maybe they already won without fighting. Maybe they are here to free us. These whispers slid through alleys, markets, and taverns faster than soldiers could silence them. The more the humans walked without fear, the more the people began to dream. And dreams were more dangerous than weapons in a city ruled by fear. The Emperor's spies reported the unrest, but even they could not deny what they had seen. They had watched mothers pull their children close not out of terror but out of wonder. They had seen merchants stare at the humans with eyes that had not held hope for decades. They had seen soldiers, hardened and loyal, lower their rifles just slightly when the humans passed. The Empire had ruled for centuries through control of sound. Commands shouted by generals, orders barked by soldiers, screams of those punished in the square. Sound had always been their tool, but now the humans had taken sound away. Their silence left nothing for the Empire to hold on to. In the shadows of the grand towers, rumors grew bolder. Some whispered that the humans carried secret technology, invisible to the eye, that made them fearless. Others whispered that humans were born without the ability to feel fear at all, that their hearts beat differently, stronger, unbreakable. And some whispered that they were more than mortal, that perhaps they had come not as men and women, but as something greater, messengers of a truth the galaxy had forgotten. The whispers scared the Empire more than the humans themselves. Words were seeds, and these seeds had already found the cracks in the stone walls of the capital. In hidden places, rebels listened. For years, small groups had resisted the Empire in secret, scattered and hopeless. They had no weapons strong enough, no armies large enough, no leaders brave enough. But now, watching through broken windows and secret tunnels, they saw the humans walking calmly into the palace grounds. They felt something ignite inside them. If humans can do this, one rebel leader whispered, then so can we. Even the soldiers heard the whispers. Standing stiff at their posts, they tried to ignore them, but their minds betrayed them. One soldier thought of his brother, executed for speaking against the Empire. Another thought of his village, burned as punishment for late taxes. Another remembered the cries of children forced into labor. The humans said nothing, but they did not need to. Every soldier saw their silence and heard a question inside it. How long will you obey? The Emperor felt the shift. From his balcony, he saw the people gathering. They were not shouting, not rebelling, not fighting. They were only watching the humans walk. But he knew the danger. Crowds were dangerous not because of noise, but because of unity. And silence, shared by millions, could become the loudest unity of all. Inside the palace war chamber, the generals argued louder than ever. We must crush them now, one demanded. Every moment we wait, their power grows, another spat. They are planting rebellion with their silence, a third warned. But no one moved. No one dared give the order. Because deep inside, even the generals were shaken. They had expected humans to arrive with fire and fury. Fire could be fought with fire. Fury could be drowned with blood. But silence? Silence could not be stopped. Night fell over the capital. The towers lit with cold white lights and the streets glowed beneath the watch of hovering drones. But even as darkness came, the humans did not stop. They continued their march, steady and calm, their shadows stretching long across the stones. In the taverns, the whispers turned into quiet oaths. Some citizens swore they would never bow again. Others swore that when the time came, they would follow the humans. The Empire's police tried to break these gatherings, but every time they entered, the people said the same thing. Nothing. Silence greeted them, and silence frightened them. Far away in hidden corners of the galaxy, intercepted messages carried the tale. Other worlds under imperial chains heard it. Humans had walked into the capital itself and remained unbroken. On distant planets, miners, slaves, and farmers whispered the story. It traveled faster than light itself, faster than any fleet. The Empire could feel its control slipping, not because of war, but because of silence and whispers, and yet the humans had not even reached the palace gates. As they approached, the Emperor stepped into the shadows of his throne room. For the first time in many years, he felt doubt. He had armies enough to end worlds. He had fleets that could surround suns. Yet here he stood, watching strangers walk through his city, and he did not know what to do. The whispers outside grew louder in their stillness. It was as if the galaxy itself was holding its breath. The humans walked, and every shadow in the capital leaned toward them. The Empire was beginning to fracture, not with battle, but with silence. The boulevard of the Galactic Capital had never been so tense. The humans were close now, their calm march carrying them within sight of the palace gates. The golden towers of the Empire rose like mountains around them, but the humans did not falter. Their silence had already spread across the city, and now it pressed against the very heart of the Empire. The Emperor's soldiers lined both sides of the street. Their armor gleamed under the cold white lights, rifles ready, cannons hidden in the towers above. One command could unleash devastation. The humans would be nothing but ash. That was what the Empire told itself. That was the lie the generals repeated. But no soldier truly believed it anymore. Every step the humans took forward made the soldiers tighten their grips. Sweat gathered inside helmets and breaths came fast. The silence was unbearable. It screamed at them louder than any battle cry. The generals waiting in the war chamber could not hold their anger. "They are mocking us," one said. "They test our patience," another spat. "They spread weakness in every corner of the city," a third shouted. The council turned to the Emperor. "Command us and we will erase them," they said. "Give us the order, and the galaxy will remember your power." But the Emperor's hand did not rise. His golden eyes never left the humans who walked in perfect formation, each step steady, each face calm. He saw no fear in them. That was what disturbed him most. Fear was the Empire's greatest weapon, and yet it slid off the humans like rain against stone. The crowd of citizens had grown. They lined the streets in silence, watching, waiting. Mothers held their children close. Old men leaned on canes. Workers stood with tools still in their hands. They had come not to cheer, not to protest, but simply to witness. And their silence joined the silence of the humans until it became a living thing, heavier than the air itself. The soldiers began to break inside. One young recruit whispered into his helmet, "Why do they not stop?" His commander hissed at him to be quiet, but his question did not fade. Others felt it too. The silence asked them all the same thing. "What are you fighting for?" The humans finally reached the palace gates. Black iron carved with the faces of past emperors rose high above them. Behind those gates, thousands of guards waited, weapons humming, shields powered, ready for the command that had not yet come. The Emperor stepped forward to the balcony. His golden armor caught the lights, and the people below saw him clearly. For years his presence had brought silence through fear. But today the silence was not his. It belonged to the humans. He raised his hand and the soldiers straightened. The generals leaned forward. The crowd froze. This was the moment. With a single word he could crush them. With a single word the silence would end in fire. But before he could speak, the humans stopped. For the first time since their arrival, they moved as one. They turned their heads toward the balcony, toward the Emperor himself, and they said nothing. No speech. No plea, no threat, only silence. That silence broke something inside the Empire. The soldiers at the gates felt their hands tremble. They had been trained to fear nothing, but now they feared everything. What kind of beings could face an empire and not utter a single word? What kind of strength lived inside them that they needed no weapons, no cries, no demands? The generals felt it too. Their anger turned to unease. "They should be begging," one muttered. "They should be screaming," said another. But they were not. And that truth was more dangerous than any weapon. Among the people in the crowd, a spark lit. A man who had once been silent under the Empire's rule stood straighter. A woman who had lost her family to Imperial soldiers raised her head. Children who had only known fear looked at the humans and saw something new, something the Empire had always denied them. Hope. The Emperor's voice trembled, though he tried to hide it. "Why do you come here?" he demanded. The humans gave no answer. Their silence echoed louder than his words. One of the Emperor's guards standing at the gate lowered his weapon. His commander barked at him, but the soldier did not lift it again. Another followed, and another. In moments, dozens of rifles hung loose at their sides. The Emperor's fury burned. "Traitors," he hissed. But deep down he knew the truth. These soldiers were not betraying the Empire. They were betraying fear. The breaking point had come. Not with battle, not with fire, but with silence. The Empire had faced many enemies across the stars. They had crushed rebellions, destroyed fleets, silenced worlds. But never had they faced an enemy who fought without sound. Never had they faced silence as a weapon. And as the humans stood before the palace gates, still unbroken, the Emperor understood something that shook him to his core. He was no longer the one in control. The silence had already won. The humans stood before the palace gates, silent and unbroken. Behind the gates, the Emperor's guards shifted nervously. Their weapons hummed, but their hearts no longer followed their orders. Above them, the golden balcony shone, and from it the Emperor looked down on his uninvited guests. For the first time in his reign, he did not feel like a ruler. He felt like a man being judged. The silence pressed harder. It was no longer just the silence of the humans. It was the silence of the soldiers who dared not fire. It was the silence of the citizens who refused to scream. It was the silence of the galaxy itself, waiting to see what would happen. The Emperor clenched his fists. He had faced fleets, assassins, and rebellions. He had silenced worlds with a single word. But never had he been silenced himself. "What do you want?" he demanded, his voice sharp and heavy in the stillness. The humans did not answer. Their calm eyes met his. They did not bow, did not look away. They stood with the strength of mountains, unmoved by his voice. The silence was more terrifying than war. It stripped away the Emperor's power. His threats meant nothing. His soldiers trembled. His citizens watched him not with fear, but with something he could not tolerate: hope. In the crowd, a boy tugged on his mother's sleeve. "Why are they not afraid?" he whispered. His mother's eyes shone as she whispered back, "Because they are free." The Emperor's rage boiled. "You dare mock me with your silence? You dare walk into my city without fear?" His voice thundered, but the silence swallowed it whole. The more he shouted, the smaller he became. One of the generals beside him spoke, but his voice wavered. "My Emperor, if we do not act now, silence." The Emperor roared. But the command backfired. The word echoed through the palace and into the streets, and the people heard it not as an order, but as the truth. Silence. That was all that remained of the Empire's strength. The humans stepped closer, their boots striking the stone in perfect rhythm. The gates, meant to intimidate, now looked weak before them. Guards lowered their rifles one by one. Some dropped them completely. No punishment could make them obey. Fear no longer controlled them. The Emperor's golden armor gleamed, but his spirit dimmed. He felt the weight of the silence pressing down, stripping away his illusions. Power meant nothing if no one believed in it. Authority meant nothing if no one feared it. And here, in his own capital, before his own throne, he realized he had already lost. The humans finally stopped. They looked up at the balcony. Still, they spoke no words. And then, as if on cue, the citizens of the capital followed their lead. The millions gathered along the boulevard did not cheer, did not shout, did not sing. They stood in silence. A silence deeper and stronger than the Emperor had ever known. It spread like fire through the city, through the capital, through the galaxy. The silence was not empty. It was full of meaning. It was unity. It was defiance. It was freedom. The Emperor staggered back, his golden crown heavy on his head. He had always believed power came from fear, from noise, from domination. But now he understood the truth too late. Silence was stronger. A soldier at the gate stepped forward. He removed his helmet and placed it on the ground. His face was young, tired, but steady. He looked at the humans, then at the crowd, and in the silence, his choice was clear. He no longer served fear, others followed. Helmets fell to the ground one after another, until the gates were no longer defended but abandoned. The Emperor's generals shouted in panic, but no one listened. Their voices dissolved into the stillness. The humans had not lifted a weapon. They had not spoken a word. Yet they had broken an empire. The Emperor sank back onto his throne, his voice barely more than a whisper. How can silence win? But the galaxy had already answered. The story of that day spread faster than light, across conquered worlds, across oppressed colonies, across every chain the Empire had ever forged. The tale was told. Humans walked into the heart of the Empire. The Emperor prepared for war. The people expected terror, and what came instead was silence. and that silence was enough to shatter fear. The galaxy changed that day, not with fire, not with blood, but with silence. The Empire would never recover from it. Because once silence was shared, once it was understood, it could never be taken away. The humans turned, still silent, and walked out of the palace gates. They left as they had arrived, calm, steady, unbroken. The crowd parted for them, not out of fear, but out of respect. And in that moment, every soul in the capital, every heart across the galaxy, knew the same truth. The Empire had prepared for war. But it was silence that conquered them.